Hey, PBio, and welcome back to our lecture series. We're diving into Chapter 8, talking about photosynthesis. So, if you remember last chapter, we were talking about cellular respiration, and so you should know by now the formula C6H12O6, or glucose sugar, and 6O2, or oxygen, is going to burn in a combustion reaction that's going to give us 6 carbon dioxide molecules, 6 water molecules, and a bunch of energy stored in ATP. Well, now for photosynthesis, we're going to do the exact opposite. And those products from cellular respiration are going to become the reactants that are used to make sugar for photosynthesis. So, 6 carbon dioxide molecules, 6 water molecules, and then add some energy in the form of light is going to produce a glucose molecule and 6 oxygens that are going to get respired out by the plant. This is once again a redox reaction. So all that carbon that plants are using to build themselves up, to grow, to process for energy is coming from carbon dioxide. And that carbon dioxide is getting reduced when water gets oxidized and donates electrons and some hydrogen atoms to build that sugar molecule. Luckily, though, I'm not going to force you to keep track of all the carbons and electrons like we had to do in cellular respiration. So, where is this taking place? Well, if we zoom in on a leaf, you're going to see that the leaf on the top and bottom is protected by a thin, waxy layer called the cuticle. Underneath that is a layer of cells called the epidermis. And then inside of that, the majority of the leaf are cell tissue called the mesophyll. And this is where the majority of photosynthesis is going to take place. Some other structures you may recognize inside the mesophyll is a bundle of tubes known as the xylem and phloem, bringing water up through the xylem, taking sugars back down to the roots through the phloem, and then our stomata, protected by the guard cells, which is where water is going to be released for transpiration to happen, and carbon dioxide will come in to use as a reactant in photosynthesis. Inside of these plant cells, you're going to find a specialized organelle for photosynthesis called the chloroplast. Now, the chloroplast, like the mitochondria, is a double membrane bound organelle. This is another piece of evidence for our endosymbiont theory, where when the chloroplast was an independent living bacterium, it was swallowed by another one, giving it that second membrane as it was taken in by endocytosis. But it was kept because it was really good at producing sugar. Inside of those two membranes is a cytosol-like fluid called the stroma. And then there's these big stacks of discs. Those individual discs are called thylakoids. The stacks of thylakoids are called granum. And these thylakoids are where the light reactions of photosynthesis is going to take place. So they're full of chlorophyll pigments, which are going to absorb that light and oxidize that water. All right, so how does all this happen? Well, let's first take a little bit of a look at light. So if you've ever seen a Skittles commercial where they mention taste the rainbow, they're not actually wrong. Because through photosynthesis, light is going to make food. And when light is refracted, it forms that visible light spectrum, or a rainbow. And because we would have nothing to eat without light, since plants are utilizing light, and if you eat animals, they eat plants, so indirectly you are tasting the rainbow every time you eat some food, not just with Skittles. So light is a form of energy. It's a particle and a wave. And so it's going to have different wavelengths are going to determine different types of light, different types of energy. And so plants have these really specialized pigments that are going to absorb that light, break apart water, and build glucose. So if we look at the entire electromagnetic spectrum, there's a narrow band that makes visible light, or what we can actually see with our eyes. That range is from 380 nanometers to 750 nanometers for a wavelength, and that's going to be from violet to red. So red is the longest wavelength we can see with our eyes. Violet is the shortest wavelength. There's other types of species that have eyes that can see into the UV range or into the infrared range. We unfortunately cannot. So you'll need to get some insect eyes or bird eyes if you'd like to be able to do that. So, because there's different wavelengths of light, not everything is going to be absorbed. When a green leaf appears green to us, it is not absorbing green light. In fact, it's reflecting green light because that's the light that's hitting our eyes. Every other wavelength is being absorbed. So, knowing that, we can probably take a guess that green light is going to be one of the worst lights you can utilize to help a plant grow because it is going to be reflecting it and not really able to absorb much. So when we think about that now, of why would, if leaves are green, why would they change color in the fall? So why would they change what color they're reflecting? Well, we're going to do a little experiment in class with spinach leaves where we're going to pull apart the pigments in a spinach leaf using chromatography. And what you're going to see is that there's not just green inside that green spinach leaf. There's yellows, there's oranges, and that's because chlorophyll is not just the only pigment. There's actually two types of chlorophylls and also carotenoids. And they're each going to process different wavelengths of light better than others. And so that's going to result in different colors present in a leaf. However, there's mostly chlorophyll A, which is that reflecting that green light that we see. And since it's mostly reflecting green light, that's what we perceive the leaf to be. But there's other colors hidden in there. And in the fall, when there's less sunlight and the angle of the sun is changing, the leaf is going to start to break down chlorophyll, and that chlorophyll is going to decline because it's not going to be as efficient anymore. And underneath, we're going to start to see some of those other pigments in the leaf that do a job. So, like, for example, carotenes are going to appear as orange, and those carotenes are going to start being the primary photosynthetic producer. There's also a pigment called anthocyanin, which helps absorb some excess light photons that aren't actually utilized by chlorophyll. And so those become more visible as the chlorophyll goes away. So those reds and yellows and oranges are always actually there in the leaf. It's just when the chlorophyll goes away, we're able to see them because they're not drowned out by all that chlorophyll. All right. Catch you next time.